Welcome back. Panel is with us. Anna Palmer, founder of PUNCHBOWL News. Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters. Rich Lowry, editor of National Review. And Maria Teresa KUMAR, president of VOTO LATINO. Welcome all. So to say this has not been a great week for the Biden presidency is a bit of an understatement. Just Friday was rough. The FDA scuttled its hopes for COVID boosters for everyone over 16. There's a new migrant crisis at the Texas border with more than 10,000 Haitians living in deteriorating conditions. U.S. military had to admit its missile strike in Kabul in response to the killing of 13 soldiers was in error, and that it killed up to 10 innocent civilians. And then you had the issue with France, so angry about the U.S. sabotaging their submarine deal with Australia that they actually recalled their ambassador. Jeff Mason, what is the mood at the White House right now? Because it's been a rough 6 weeks, and it seems as if it's only getting worse.
And it got a lot worse on that Friday afternoon with all of those things happening in one day. The mood is one of soldiering on. I mean, they're certainly embattled right now, but this White House has said from the beginning Joe Biden can chew gum and walk at the same time, and all the people around him can do the same. But certainly some of these crises are not ones that they expected. I don't think they expected to see one of the U.S.'s oldest allies recalling its ambassador. So they're soldiering on. They're trying to say, we've got this. We're going to roll through it. But it's a tough time.
You know, Anna, with the Afghanistan withdrawal and how it went, and then you have what the Pentagon said, and then you look at the border, there is this growing, boy, can you guys get your arms around our problems? This seems to be the real challenge.
Yeah, and I think they have continuing to stumble here, right? They don't have the messaging, right? They don't necessarily have the policy, right? I think there's a lot of questions on Capitol Hill now that these members are coming back where they're going to face investigations on Afghanistan. What happened there? It's not going away. And I think this is something where this White House has really not kind of got its feet underneath it. And now we're weeks into this, right? They need to kind of figure out what their messaging is going to be. How are they going to deal with tough questions?
Maria Teresa, this migrant crisis has been, look, it's not seasonal, right? President Biden thought it was going to be seasonal. This was just one of the things he had said that turned out not to be true these days. And this issue with the Haitians is, I mean, you and I were talking earlier, this is yet another problem of disinformation, perhaps for the Haitian people, but this is a bunch of bad choices. We're really going to send people back to Haiti?
Well, I think their options right now are really limited. As you said, Chuck, there is tons of disinformation right now that if you were to ask me what is one of the things that's under the radar that folks aren't paying attention to, but that is a national security crisis, it is the disinformation that we're battling, whether it's the crisis at the border, whether it's people getting vaccine hesitancy, whether it's getting information that just does not allow them to understand what that government is actually doing for them. When we talk about what's happening right now, for example, even in France had to pull their ambassador back because they just lost a major contract of government jobs. So they're trying to figure out how do you actually save face. But they understand that the alliance right now between the United States, Germany, France, and Australia, through the NATO alliances, they need to make sure that they continue fortifying because who is our biggest challenge right now? China. And that is why the Australians decided who they wanted to buy their submarines from.
By the way, I think the White House would agree with you about disinformation. I mean, that has been something they've been trying to combat for months as well, and they're frustrated by it.
But the only thing conservatives aren't criticizing Biden on is the deal with Australia.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, someone really upsets France that they should deserve to be upset.
Freedom
so
prize.
I think some of this, the French will get over it. They'll get their story straight on boosters. But I focus in on the border in Afghanistan because they're both, to some significant extent, self-inflicted. They're national embarrassments, and they give a sense that events are out of control. And I don't think we're here yet, but if this kind of slide continues, the risk to Biden is a rap that would stick with people would be decent guy, but not up for the job. And that's what they have to try to avoid at all costs.
There's a certain one-term Democratic president that would be described that way, I believe, from the late 70s in Mr. Carter. But I want to bring this over to the deal on Capitol Hill. He needs to get this, and yet I got to put up something here from the political director of the Missouri AFL-CIO, and he was just talking about the Biden agenda complete. I don't think 1% of reliable or frequent Democratic voters have even a decent understanding of what Democrats are trying to do in Washington, D.C. right now. The disconnect between what folks in Washington, D.C. are talking about and what folks on the ground know is massive. He was more saying, hey, they've done good things and they haven't been able to communicate them very well. But I do feel like in the midst of this COVID surge, what's happening on the border, the congressional fight feels like one that's only more problematic.
Well, number one, I would say you're right that he needs it. And the White House is confident. I was traveling with President Biden on 9/11 last weekend, and we chatted with him briefly, and he expressed a lot of confidence that some Republicans, and Anna might have more to say about this, who aren't coming out in favor of these deals are still going to be with him. And that goes back to exactly. I know.
They wildly
Talk about disinformation.
They wildly overestimate where Republicans are here. And I think, to your point, the biggest issue is going to be just getting the lights going. They're going to have to do government funding. They're going to have to do the debt limit. That is not what anybody in the middle of the country is concerned about. It's why Shots in the Arms played so well, because it's something people can understand. The next several months are going to be a slog of really just, can Biden turn Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and get them to support a massive reconciliation package, which, then they can use to 2022. But up until then, the next 4 months are going to be tough.
Which means it's not even as much about bipartisanship. It's as much about just getting Democrats on board.
All right, but Maria Teresa, so let's say they get the bill passed, but if they don't explain it, we saw what happened in healthcare.
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge right now, is that the consumption of American media right now in everyday households is balkanized. So one of the challenges that
the Biden...
one of the challenges is that people are starting to see the child tax credit hit their bank account. They don't really understand where it's coming from.
That was the amazing thing. That was what this Missouri labor leader was talking about, going, my own people don't even know that was based on a Democratic...
One of the paradoxes. You would think like an enormous spending bill would have more of an impact, but it might be that it has less of an impact because you scatter money across the landscape, sort of absorbed in the ground, and no one knows where it came from or whether it's coming again. And this reconciliation bill is very much the same. People on my part, the side of the aisle, are focused on, there's a huge immigration bill tucked into this reconciliation bill that amnesty about 8 million people, and no one's talking about it because there's so much in it and it's so huge.
I was just going to say, do Democrats really want the parliamentarian to allow immigration into this reconciliation? I'm sorry, this feels like that could be a poison pill.
I think that it's going to be, we don't know. We don't know what the parliamentarian is going to say right now. They are basically doing all of the arguments for and against it. But I do think that immigration, voting rights, abortion are what Democrats are going to run on in 2022, not what their spending bill is.
But I do think that this is where the Biden administration, I think, really needs to wrap themselves around, and the Democrats need to wrap themselves around and learn a little bit from the recall, in the Newsom recall. And that is, yes, right now Biden may have had a tough week, but it is an asymmetrical conversation between him and what Trump represents. Talk about the abortion bill. Talk about Larry Elders and his totality. It's the antithesis of American values. And that's where they need to lie about. Because we right now are talking about policy, but we are right now really living in a cultural war of what is the heart of America. And that is where the Biden administration really needs to lean into.
What you're saying is Biden needs a foil. No, I mean, I've joked that, when Biden comes out for Facebook and Twitter asking President Trump to get back on, in some ways.
But you don't want him on.
I know.
Because otherwise the rally yesterday would have been so much bigger.
That's true.
Right?
But it did give Joe Biden's numbers go up when Donald Trump is in the news.
Yeah, but you're not going to have Larry Elder running everywhere, and everywhere is not California.
Apparently, Biden's going to be traveling less. What is that about?
They got some things knocked out with the California trip, the wildfires, focusing on climate change. He is going to, at least at this point, still planning to go to the G20 and the Glasgow Climate Conference. But in general, I think he's planning to focus on stuff from home. Home being Washington, D.C., and also Delaware on the weekend.
Delaware one.
Yeah, but a certain reconciliation bill is too big to fail.
Exactly. And he's got a lot riding on getting stuff right here.
All right.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.